Hey, this is Kendall Lyden with My Home Option, and today we're going to be talking about title companies and what they do and all that kind of good stuff. So way back when, let's jump into a history lesson, a conveyancer would make sure that a property was unencumbered. Unencumbered, what does that mean? Well, this was making sure that the current owner had rights to sell the house, there were no liens on it, and it meant that nobody could take the property for any reason. But here was the biggest problem. There was no guarantees and there was no insurance on it if they were wrong. Ooh, not a fun position to be in. But since the late 1880s, title companies have taken over and they now give title insurance. It's their job to make sure that there are no problems within the transaction, within the chain of title, that all the liens are going to be paid for, and if they miss something, they pay for it and the property is still protected. So what does this mean? Well, it means that title companies are amazing. You don't want to do a transaction without them. You want to make sure that everything is clear before you close. So let's jump in on this video to talk about all things title, what it is, what they do, and why you need them. So first off, before we jump too much into the title process, I just want to make one little term clear. The difference between a deed and a title. So a deed shows who the owner is of a property, but a title shows the chain of ownership of a certain property, and it also shows the description of the property, and it also shows all of the liens that have been or are on the property as those get added and then cleared off of the chain of title. So that's the difference between those two. So you might have the deed in your name, but there are still liens on the title. It's two separate things. And so the title company is dealing with the title. Now let's talk about what a title company really does. They ensure that everyone at the end of the day is paid and protected as the deed of a property is transferred from one homeowner to a new homeowner, from the seller to the buyer. Now, why is that important? Well, it's really a lot more for the buyer. If a buyer buys a home and let's say that property taxes haven't been paid in years, well, those taxes still have to be paid. And so if let's say that it wasn't discovered that the home ownership had transferred until after it had happened, those property tax, the government would still come looking for now the buyer for those property taxes, and that's just not really a fun conversation for the buyer because they're not the one who missed all those payments over time. And so really what it does is just make sure that the seller, with what they're making on the property, is making sure that all that goes towards paying off the liens first before they make their profits so that everything is cleared. Let me give you a second example. In one of the real estate investing deals I was doing one time, the homeowner had a very common name. So him and his wife were looking to sell the home. They wanted to sell to an investor so they could sell quickly. Their house was in a little bit rougher condition. But when we got it over to title, it turns out there were child support payments, a lien for that hadn't been paid. Well, you know, this guy was still married to his first wife. You know, everything was good there. They were trying to figure out what was going on. It turns out he has a very common name. They accidentally put it under the wrong person. So then that also, you know, in that situation, title also made sure that it was clear for the home seller to make sure that, you know, it wasn't improperly against the wrong person, but everything was, you know, it was cleared. The liens were all right in the right spots, and so got them cleared of that illegitimate lien against their property. So then let's talk about chain of title. So this is where, you know, you really make sure the owner is the real owner. They have the right to sell what they're selling, and that the buyer doesn't get any surprise visits from contractors or long lost relatives of the seller after closing, especially if it's an inherited property. You know, that's extremely important because let's say that one heir sold it and then, well, turns out that person had a brother and a sister who also had rights to that property. Well, they come knocking at the buyer's door one day. Hey, open up. We want our payment for this property. You didn't buy it from us. You only bought it from our brother. There's still two more people to get paid out. Now that buyer has to go through a very tough, awkward conversation and situation. So making sure that title is done properly is just a fantastic thing. Once you have title insurance, let's say that same situation happened, that would be covered under title insurance and they would get paid from title insurance. The brother and the sister of that situation would have. So with the property survey and title research, this is where the title company is going to order a property survey to make sure that they know exactly where the property begins and ends. And title will also use this to prepare a title abstract. And this is basically just making sure that everybody understands exactly what's being sold, exactly what's being purchased. So that way there's no confusion at the end of the day of, well, I thought I bought a bigger house, or a bigger yard, a bigger piece of land, or I thought I bought a smaller piece of land, or wait, I didn't mean to sell all that. I was only selling this one piece. So you do the survey and you prepare this title abstract and just make sure that everybody's clear on exactly what's being sold and what's being purchased. And then again, on that title insurance, generally the seller is going to pay for the buyer's title policy, but then the buyer is going to pay for a separate title policy for the lender. The lender gets a separate title policy that protects them as well and their financial interests. And this is only paid for one time at closing. It's not like car insurance where it's paid month over month over month. It's just paid one time at closing. It's a one-time done deal. Now, who holds title? As you're going through this transaction in this process, you just need to make sure at the end of the day you understand who holds title, because whoever holds title has the right to sell the house. They have the right to get liens against the house, mortgages, all that kind of stuff. So you just need to make sure you understand. So be sure you know who holds title at closing, so you know who's on the the hook for expenses, and so you know who has an interest when it comes time to close and to sell. So then at closing, this usually happens at the title company's office. You typically have a few days to review all the important documents before closing and funding. And then you have the funding step, and this is where usually the title company is going to hold throughout this entire process the earnest money and the option money. And then when the buyer funds, whether they're paying up cash or they have a lender, traditionally, it's going to look a lot more like they'll have a lender. Well, the lender will wire the funds over to the title company, and then the title company will wire the funds over to the seller. And they're also, holding that earnest money and the option money through the process. And they're really just that unbiased middleman for everybody, representing just the well-being and the best interest of everybody in the transaction, while the real estate agents and the lenders each are going to represent a certain party. So another unbiased, great middleman, just to say, is My Home Option. So make sure that you get connected with a great agent, a great lender, and a great title company over at myhomeoption.com, where you can schedule your free one-on-one strategy session. Thanks so much for stopping by. I hope that gives you a little bit better understanding about what happens during this title process. It was really cool kind of digging in, understanding all the little facets here and there of what they do. And we're excited to work with you very soon with your free one-on-one strategy session call as we get you connected with the best expert for you and your unique situation. Talk to you soon.